I helped Tessa thread the chain back through the asylum gate, and that should have been the moment I turned around and left. The chain felt cold and greasy in my hands. It scraped across the black bars with a sound that carried way farther than it should have in the afternoon quiet. Tessa snapped the brass master lock shut, tugged it once, then slipped the key onto the ring she'd taken from her dad's desk. After that, I looked at her and said, "Why are we locking it again?" She didn't answer right away. She was staring past me at the road, through the trees, chewing the inside of her cheek. Then she said, "If somebody drives by, it looks untouched." That made enough sense, so I stopped asking questions. If her dad came by, he'd see the chain in place and keep going. If anybody else came by, same thing. The building sat behind the gate at the end of a cracked loop of concrete, 3 stories of old brick and boarded-up windows. The boards had split and curled at the corners, and a few windows had gaps where the plywood had fallen away. Those openings somehow made the place look less abandoned, like it was still watching. Dead leaves skittered over the walkway. Grass had pushed up through the cracks and gone yellow at the tips. I still don't know why her parents owned that place. Maybe it was taxes. Maybe some development deal that fell through. Maybe family mess. Tessa never explained it in a straight line. She just said, "It's ours," like she was talking about an old boat nobody used anymore. The only part that mattered to me then was that she had the keys, and she had asked me to come. She knew I'd say yes. That was the embarrassing part. Tessa could text me busy, with no punctuation, and I'd be pulling on my shoes before I answered. She wasn't even especially nice to me. She just had this way of looking at you when she wanted something, steady and amused, like she already knew what you were going to do. The front entrance was boarded shut with 2x4s and a sheet of plywood bolted over the handles, so we went around to the side of the building where an old ground floor window had already been broken out. Somebody had taped cardboard over the jagged lower edge at some point. The cardboard was damp and soft. A strip peeled off on my jeans when I climbed through. "You've been in here before?" I asked. Tessa brushed brick dust off her palms and said, "No, you sound very sure for somebody who's never been in here. My dad said if I ever came near this place, he'd take my car, my laptop, and probably my bedroom door." I snorted at that. "Your bedroom door?" He likes symbolism. That was the last normal laugh either of us got. Inside, the air had that closed-up building smell, wet plaster, mouse droppings, old mop water. My sneakers stuck to patches of black and white tile where something had leaked and dried years ago. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. Battery at 32%. I noticed that right away, which says something about where my head was at. Tessa didn't pull out her phone. "You forgot it? Left it home?" She said, "My mom tracks me." That also made enough sense, so I let it go. We moved through the first floor with me holding the light while Tessa walked half a step ahead, one hand on the wall. The beam caught open doorways, a busted nurse's station, radiator pipes cut off near the floor. No beds, no cabinets. Somebody had stripped out anything worth carrying away. In the stairwell, the floor numbers were painted inside yellow circles on the cinder block. A rusted sign bracket still hung over the landing where a fire extinguisher cabinet used to be. The place felt less like a haunted house and more like an old state building that had been left to rot one section at a time. That almost made it easier. Almost. On the second floor, I said, "So if your parents own this, does that make this trespassing or family business?" Tessa glanced back at me over her shoulder. "You want me to invoice you?" "Depends. Am I paying for the asbestos package or is that included?" She smirked, and for a minute it was just 2 idiots sneaking around somewhere we weren't supposed to be. My light jittered over peeling paint and exposed lath. Somewhere in the walls, water dripped at a slow, steady pace. I kept telling myself that was all this was, a dumb story we'd tell later. By the time we got to the third floor, the building had gone almost silent. No drips up there. No birds in the broken windows. Just the rubber squeak of my thumb shifting on the side of my phone and the soft scuff of Tessa's shoes ahead of me. The third floor hallway was narrower. Patient rooms lined both sides, their doors long gone. At the far end was a heavier door, still intact, painted institutional gray under the rust. It had a square of wire-reinforced glass set at eye level, the kind with metal mesh buried inside it. Tessa stopped there. I raised the light so she could look in. She had to lift onto her toes, one hand flat against the steel. Through the glass, I could see a room with padded walls, or what used to be padded walls. The vinyl covering had split open in long seams, yellow foam pushed through in brittle curls. The floor looked bare, except for dust and scraps. "My grandfather worked here," she said. Her voice sounded different then, lower, like she was talking to herself, and I just happened to hear it. I said, "Doing what?" "He was a doctor." She kept looking in. "My grandmother was a nurse. They met here." I waited for the punchline or some weird rich family explanation. It didn't come. "That why your family still has it?" She let out a little breath through her nose. "Bad stuff happened here." "What kind of bad stuff?" Tessa finally looked back at me, and none of her usual grin was there. The kind people buy a building to keep buried. I wanted her to roll her eyes after saying that. I wanted her to laugh and call herself dramatic. Instead, she put her hand on the lever, pushed the steel door open, and stepped inside the padded room. "Come on," she said. I stayed where I was. The smell got stronger with the door open. Mildew, dust, something sour soaked into the foam. "Tessa," she turned around in the doorway. "You serious?" I shrugged because that felt safer than admitting anything. "I'm good here." She stared at me for a second, then gave this short, disgusted laugh. "You are such a coward, Drew." That hit me harder than it should have, mostly because she knew exactly where to stick the knife and always had. So I did something stupid and childish. I clicked my flashlight off and stepped away from the little window so she couldn't see me. The hallway disappeared, not fully black. A little gray leaked in from somewhere behind me, enough to make out shapes, not enough to trust any of them. At first, she played along. "Okay," she said. "Very funny." I didn't answer. Then she said my name again, sharper this time. "Drew." I stayed quiet. I could hear her shoes scuff the floor inside the room. Then the metal handle clicked once. It clicked again, harder. "Open it." I smiled for maybe 1 second, stupidly pleased with myself. Then she hit the door with the flat of her hand. "Drew?" Her voice had gone thin. The sound of it sliced through the hallway and wiped the smile off my face. I turned the flashlight back on and crossed to the door in 2 steps. "I'm here." The beam shook over the steel. I grabbed the lever and shoved. The latch clicked. The door didn't move. I pulled. Nothing. I slammed my shoulder into it hard enough to jar my teeth. Inside, Tessa was breathing too fast. I could hear it through the glass now. Short pulls, then the scrape of her palm against the other side. "Stop messing around," she said, but the words were coming apart. "I'm not." I yanked again. The lever moved. The latch made the right sound. The door stayed stuck in the frame, fused there by rust or swelling or something older than both of us. The steel groaned and stopped. Then she screamed. Not movie screaming, not one clean note. It came out torn to pieces, chopped up by whatever was happening in there. I shoved my phone up to the window. At first, my brain wouldn't make sense of what I was seeing. The room had been empty. I knew it had been empty. I had just lit up the whole thing. Now it was full. They were packed around her shoulder to shoulder. At least a dozen of them, maybe more behind the ones in front. Thin men and women in gray hospital gowns hanging off them in folds, bare feet black on the bottoms. Heads shaved close, some of them with pale lines crossing the scalp, old surgical scars pulled shiny under the dust. Their faces were hollow around the eyes and mouth. When my light hit them, their eyes held the glow instead of throwing it back, tiny dull points, pale as the paint on an old watch dial. There was no way that many people should have fit into that room like that. There was no way they should have been able to stand that still. Tessa was in the middle of them with her hands up by her face. One of them had a hand over her mouth. Another had fingers sunk into her cheeks so deep the skin bunched around the knuckles. I heard the vinyl wall covering crackle as bodies pressed into it. I heard her heel slamming the floor. I heard a wet clicking noise close to my phone speaker, and for 1 second I thought it was the door latch until I realized it was coming from inside the room, from somebody's throat. I screamed her name and hauled on the handle again. Nothing. The steel bit into my palm. She made one more sound then, not even a word anymore, just air trying to get past whatever was in her mouth. I forced myself to look one more time because looking away felt worse. All those faces had turned toward the little square of glass. Not slowly, all at once. 12 shaved heads, 12 pairs of eyes holding that dead little shine. One woman near the back had a strip of yellow foam stuck to her wet lower lip. An old man in a gown with no sleeves had both hands buried in Tessa's hair, and he was smiling with his mouth closed, pushing his cheeks up so high they trembled. And then, from somewhere just behind my left shoulder, close enough that I felt breath move against my ear, Tessa said my name. I screamed then. I screamed because she was still inside that room, because I could see both of her hands pinned against the padded wall, because the voice had come from the hallway with me.